until I found this photo, Grandmere State Park. This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. You typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline. Very interesting. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon. Should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image of that skyline back towards the viewer. And so typically we would not be able to see this. This image would be viewable from much, much higher in the sky, up in space. But instead, we're able to see it on the Lake Michigan shore. Very fascinating, and that's the same reason we're actually seeing this ring on the radar tonight as well. Because of the inversion we call atmospheric ducting, it's bending the radar rays back towards the ground. So even on a clear night, we have some interesting weather.
Now, before I proceed with the video, this is a very important point I want to replay that the meteorologist says.
The horizon should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air.
Okay, he just stated, because of the horizon, the curvature basically, you shouldn't be able to see the Chicago skyline. Now, taking a look at this photo provided by Joshua Nowicki, you can clearly see that this is no mirage. And I'll get into that in a little bit. I'll explain a superior mirage and how it looks like. And this is no superior mirage. Now understand, the distance from Chicago to Grandmere State Park in Stevensville, Michigan, it's 90 miles away. And they say over water it's 60 miles. Now understand one thing. With the supposed curvature of the earth, and at 60 miles, that will lead you to 2,400 feet behind the supposed horizon or the curvature. So the Sears Tower, also known as Willis Tower, being at 1,700 feet to the tip, the whole tower basically should be behind the horizon or the supposed curvature of the earth. And also he talks about the superior mirage. With superior mirages, the mirage is inverted. And I'm going to show some examples of that. With these photos, you can clearly see the inverted mirage. Again, more of the same. So again, when you look at this skyline, it's a complete insult for that meteorologist to call this a mirage. Nothing about this is a mirage, completely real. And also, to go along with the photo from Stevensville, Michigan, I found an additional photo from even further, a little bit further, at St. Joseph's. Found on this blog here. You can clearly see, again, the Chicago skyline all the way across Lake Michigan. And there was a dispute as far as the distance was concerned from Chicago to Michigan City, Indiana. And I want to clarify this. I might as well mention how it's been stated how the distance is driving miles. Now, from point A to point B across the lake, they say it's approximately 40 miles. So even if that's the case, with 40 miles, that's still over 1,000 miles, a little over 1,000 miles behind the supposed curvature. So in that case, you should only see the very tips of these few buildings over here. The lower ones shouldn't be in view at all. So clearly, again, doesn't add up what the meteorologist is saying. And clearly, again, this is no mirage. And take a look at some more photos here from Michigan City, Indiana, and the views of the Chicago skyline. A couple more images. And again, I point this out with the people standing on the beach. You can clearly see these are not inverted buildings. Clearly, they're there. And again, the Chicago skyline. Just for reference. And again, another photo from Michigan City, Indiana. Clearly no mirage. Again, more of the same. So to me, with this video, this is probably the best proof, or one of the best proof, supporting the flat earth theory.
The civilian space exploration team is to be the first civilian team in history to launch a rocket that reaches space.
All systems are go for launch.
T-minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
He's out there taking pictures. Here's another video that he took. Time lapse looking toward Chicago from the top of a dune in Warren Dunes State Park.
Roger, main vehicle. Okay, stand by, 13. We're looking at it. Okay.
60 miles away. You're not supposed to be able to see this. Look at that. City of Chicago from 60 miles away. And yet some knucklehead drone is going to read a prompter that's telling him to explain this as a mirage. These are photographs taken by a guy named Joshua Nowicki, right on his website. Here are some more of his pictures. You can check out for yourself, look at them. Chicago. That doesn't look like a mirage to me. The buildings also are not leaning off to the sides or leaning away from you. They're perfectly straight up and down. You know, if this is a mirage, I mean, first of all, it'd be all distorted and wavy and look totally weird. If we really are on a globe, then they should be like facing away from you, leaning away, not perfect straight up and down. They should be leaning side to side. They shouldn't look like that.
And what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage.
That is not a mirage. Okay? You can know a mirage when you see it on the road and it looks like water. You may see a little something at the end of the horizon at the beach. That, my friends, not a mirage.
Of the Chicago skyline. Very interesting here. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon. Should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image of that skyline back towards the viewer. And so typically we would not be able to see this. This image would be viewable from much, much higher in the sky, up in space. But instead, we're able to see it on the Lake Michigan shore.
Survey said. Everything that guy just says is bullshit. Thank you.
And what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline. Very interesting here. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon. Should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion.
Oh, the right conditions. Tell us what those are.
We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image.
Hold it! What the hell is that shit?
But instead, we're able to see it on the Lake Michigan shore.
So let's do the math. Distance from Grand Mare to Chicago was 59 miles. So we do our little equation. 8 times 59 times 59 equals 27,848. Divided by 12 equals 2,320 feet. So that is the amount of curvature, ground to ground, that would be existing in a 59-mile stretch. So is that what we saw in the picture of the mirage? Well, here we get to see what the math shows us it should look like. You'll see I took 4 buildings that we could recognize from those pictures in the Google Earth. Took each of their heights, including the Sears Tower, which stands 1451 or thereabouts. And this is what we should have seen. We should have seen the curvature of the Earth being the blue line, our line of sight being the green line, being at our total height of 2,000 plus. We shouldn't have seen any buildings. But what did we see? We saw this. Quite a bit different, and a difference of about 3,000 feet, and it's not a mirage. It is simply being able to see further than the owners of this world thought that we'd be able to. So they got something wrong. Here's the picture again. Now, I think for some of you, that's the final straw. I think a few people out there probably see the truth now. There really is no way around it. We're seeing further than we mathematically can on a globe. So I understand the breakup may be tough. So grab some box of tissue, go get in bed with the globe, tell a little bedtime story, what it was like 4.55 billion years ago when it was just a swirling pile of dust. And by tomorrow, you'll be over it and ready to face the world flat as it is. But we know how it is, that some of you out there are just going to keep fighting this. You just love that globe so much, you're going to make excuses for it. You're like that girl that's got a boyfriend that beats her, yet she blames herself and tells everybody that he loves her and that's why he does it, to protect her. You're going to be the same way with the globe, so you too need to go grab a box of tissue, go get in bed with your globe, and let's leave it at that.
And that turns out to be about 3,100 miles. And if you were going to try and hide this information, that the sun is actually very close, perhaps you'd encode it in symbol. Does this look familiar?
The earth is flat, living in illusion. The earth is flat, take no solution. The earth is flat, living in illusion. So
There are quite a few videos like this one where people send up their video cameras on weather balloons. One thing to note is where you can see a hot spot on the clouds directly under the sun, like here. You see it? Directly under the sun is a hot spot. Now, that would be impossible if the sun was 93 million miles away. But also note how the sun appears to move with the earth. As the camera rocks about, you'll see the sun moving around with the earth. Now again, if the sun was 93 million miles away, you wouldn't see that. Just like if you were on a speeding train, the trees next to the track will whiz past you, but the mountains in the distance would, well, they'd hardly move. And if the sun was behind those mountains, the sun wouldn't move at all. In the flat earth model, the sun rotates around us and only appears to rise and set because of the way our vision works. We see in perspective. That is, the horizon is at our eye level, and as things recede from us, they tend to converge to the centre of that horizon line, to a place that's known as the vanishing point. Just as if you were standing at the end of a very long corridor, you would see that the walls would appear to converge. The floor would appear to rise up to meet the horizon, and the ceiling would also appear to move downwards. Of course, the walls and the ceiling are all parallel to each other, so they don't actually move anywhere, but it would just appear that way. And anything that lies beyond the vanishing point is effectively invisible to us. It's beyond the limit of our vision.
Hey, geh weg, Marc. Bald ist er ja hinter der Wolke. Guck mal hier! Ich seh's. Guck mal, siehst du es? Der geht hinter der Sonne. Ey, der eine geht hinter der Sonne! Das ist ja krass. Siehst du es? Hast du es? Ey, was ist denn das für eine heilige Scheiße, ey? Ey, Alter. Hä? Hast du es gesehen? Ich hab's gesehen!
And that turns out to be about 3,100 miles. And if you were going to try and hide this information, that the sun is actually very close, perhaps you'd encode it in symbol. Does this look familiar?
So here's the exact curvature of Earth as confirmed by a university. At 1 mile distance, it's 8 inches of curve. At 2 miles distance, it's 32 inches. At 100 miles distance, the curve ought to be over 6,500 feet. That's 1.2 miles of predictable curvature. So a commercial jetliner flying at 500 miles per hour would have to continuously point the nose downwards to stay on the curve. Yet we don't see that happening. Critics will say they can see the curve from out the window of a plane, but that's not true because every video posted with a normal lens shows a flat horizon. And all planes are fitted with a horizon gauge, an attitude indicator on the instrument panel. They use the horizon gauge to line up the plane with a flat horizon. You can't line up the plane with a curved horizon. It doesn't work. So it's possible that pilots and airliners don't know the Earth is flat. They follow a designated flight path just like drivers follow the road network. They keep the plane level just like we keep the car level with a steering wheel. But how many of us have considered the exact curvature?
So there's the pretty blue marble that NASA claims we are living on, with circumference of 24,901 and 3959 radius. So to find the curvature, you take 8 inches times your distance squared. That's 8 inches times your distance squared, and if you don't square the distance, you end up with this, and this is not what NASA has shown us. They have given us a beautiful blue marble that we love. So you get 8 inches for 1 mile, 32 inches in 2 miles, 16.6 feet with 5 miles, so on and so forth. So what I did is I shot this pier, which is in Daytona Beach, Florida, and as you can see, between the water and the walkway of the pier is about 12 to 16 feet based on the height of the people and the railing. So I started at Granada, which is 4.92 miles away, and I shot this, and based on that distance and the formula, there should be 16 feet of curvature, but obviously you can still see the entire gap under the walkway there between that and the water. So in addition to that, behind that pier is actually a lighthouse, which you can see right above the pier. You can see the light. That is 16 miles away from my location, and I shot that lighthouse. Now that lighthouse is 175 feet tall, and the curvature from 16 miles away should be 170 feet. You can clearly see about the entire lighthouse beyond that pier. So like I said, there should be 170 feet of curvature, but there's none. And those hotels there are even further. Those are in New Smyrna, which is 20 miles. If NASA is right and there is, we do live on a ball, they're going to have to make up that curvature. If it's not in the 20 miles I'm shooting, well then that means it's got to be made up further on down the line. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we live on this ball and then say, oh, you can't detect the curvature. Well, you got to detect it somewhere, because if it's not dropping here, it's going to have to drop even more down the lines in order to make that circle, that ball they say we live on. And it's pretty round. That blue marble they give us is perfectly round.
Lighthouses are one great example. The Isle of Wight Lighthouse in England, it's 180 feet high and can be seen up to 42 miles away, a distance at which modern astronomers say the light should fall 996 feet below the line of sight. Why can you still see it? Another one worth mentioning that people be familiar with is the Statue of Liberty. It stands 326 feet above sea level, and on a clear day can be seen as far as 60 miles away. Now, if the Earth was a globe at the dimensions that they give us, that would put Lady Liberty at an impossible 2,074 feet below the horizon.
No, not one picture of the Earth. Imagine that. 2016, and we still don't have a picture of our home. Thousands of satellites supposedly orbiting the Earth. Why can't we get thousands of pictures? One shot with the whole Earth in it. Hell, we should have a channel on cable that shows the Earth rotating 24 hours a day, every day. Nope. Let's listen to NASA's very own Robert Simon talk about how we get our fake pictures of Earth.
In 1972, we saw our home in a new way. Apollo 17 astronauts snapped this picture.
It gave people the first look at their home planet as a single entity.
Last week, scientists at NASA released this. The shot is compiled from data from NASA's VEERS instrument, which orbits the Earth about every 100 minutes, taking measurements of light coming off the planet. That can be translated into ribbons of imagery like this, and then into one of these. And this is just the latest in NASA's Earth from Space album, which may be one of the most mind-expanding collections of images in human history. Then in 2002, Blue Marble 2.0. NASA's Rob Simon made this. Simon's job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it's a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
there was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Excuse me, I'm allergic to bullshit. Not having one authentic picture of the Earth alone is a huge red flag.
Christoph, let me ask you, why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, the world's gonna change. Because it's just cooler too.
Dude, do you realize what you're saying? You're saying that the Earth is not a ball. Do you know what the ramifications are? Did you really think this through? Like on religion, where we're from, belief, and real estate, the authority of governments, everything. Because you know what? It does hold it all together. When you think about it, it's like, why you emperor? Because I'm emperor. Why you emperor? Because I say so. No, you're not. Why you emperor? Because I have armies. Well, you got money. How'd you get the money, all that? Because we figured out the way it is. Because we're in charge of the room. We set up the room. We placed the furniture. We invited you in. This is the shape of the room. This is the amount of space you have to enjoy yourself. This is it. This is the whole room. Yeah, this is the whole room. You wouldn't know if you go into a house and you're unblindfolded if there's other rooms or how big the house is. Is the world that way? Did they rearrange the furniture a certain way and there's another room beyond the wall? It's the old Plato's cave. It's the old, how would you know? That's the shape of the Earth. You've never been up there to see the point of view you think is what you're on. Now, I'm the guy, I'm a threat because I brought that up in 2015. I'm a messenger, okay? Picking my nose. That's it. Painting. You know, lovely women, doing live shows, doing comedy. You know, I had to put my shit aside to go, hold on a second, before you all run off and kill each other in a world war here. This looks like a painting to me. How do you know this is like a real ball? The people want you to go off to war, kill each other. I mean, you've never seen this point of view. I'm just saying, I'm going to go back and do some portraits and some sea life and enjoy myself. By the way, that's a painting. Oh, by the way, clouds not moving from real time-lapse footage of the Earth as a ball in space. Spinning 30% of the Earth, but the clouds don't actually mutate and dissolve like clouds do when I see fast-forward time-lapse just from the ground looking up at sky, or the movie Baraka.
The earth is flat, living in illusion. The earth is flat, we take some illusion. The earth is flat, living in illusion. So people don't know what to do. The earth is flat, living in illusion. The earth is flat, staging illusion. The earth is flat, living in illusion. So
and we're over only about 300 miles from Heffernan. Over here, you can see the moon. And to the left, the sun. How cool is that?
The earth was flat, if you went too far you would fall off. Now the earth is round, if the shape change again everybody would have started laugh. The average man can't prove up most of the things that he chooses to speak of, and still run research and find out the root of the truth that you seek of.
We all know it's a flat, right?
Of course it's flat. Sure, I know the world is flat.
Well, so do I. Everybody knows that.
I don't know what to do. The earth is flat. Living in illusion. The earth is flat. Take my solution. The earth is flat. Living in illusion. So people don't know what to do.
Here is a mirage. You typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore.